When Jake agreed to help his mysterious roommate through a medical condition during lockdown, he never expected it would change his DNA, or that his roommate wasn't even human. Jake had been searching for a place to live for 3 whole months. Every apartment he looked at was either too expensive or in a terrible neighborhood. Being a graduate student meant his budget was tight, and finding something decent seemed impossible. His friends kept telling him to look further from campus, but he needed something close to the university library, where he spent most of his time working on his engineering project. That Tuesday morning, Jake was scrolling through rental websites when he saw an ad that made him stop. A 2-bedroom apartment in downtown, just 15 minutes from campus, for half the price of anything else he had seen. The photos looked amazing too. Modern kitchen, big windows, clean and bright. It had to be fake or some kind of scam. But Jake was getting desperate. His temporary housing arrangement was ending in 2 weeks and he had nowhere else to go. So he called the number in the ad, expecting either no answer or someone trying to steal his money. A calm voice answered on the second ring. "Hello, you are calling about the apartment?" The voice sounded different somehow. Not quite an accent, but like English wasn't their first language, even though they spoke it perfectly. "Yeah, hi. I saw your ad online. Is the place still available?" Jake asked, already preparing for disappointment. "Yes, it is available. When would you like to see it?" They arranged to meet that afternoon. Jake arrived at the building 20 minutes early, still convinced this was too good to be true. The building was nice, not fancy but clean and well-maintained. When his phone buzzed with a text saying, "Coming down now," he looked toward the entrance. The person who walked out was unlike anyone Jake had ever met. They looked mostly normal, but something was different. Their skin had this subtle glow to it, like they had just stepped out of really good lighting. And their eyes. Jake couldn't quite figure out what color they were. They seemed to shift between gray and blue and something that looked almost silver. "You must be Jake," they said, extending a hand. "I am called River." River's handshake was firm, but their skin felt cooler than normal. "Not cold, just different. Nice to meet you. So, about the apartment," Jake started, still trying to figure out what seemed unusual about this person. River smiled, and Jake noticed their teeth were perfectly straight and white. "Let me show you around. I think you will like it." The apartment was even better than the photos. Spacious living room, huge windows that let in tons of natural light, a kitchen with modern appliances, and a bedroom that was bigger than Jake's current entire living space. Everything was clean and organized in a way that seemed almost too perfect. "This is incredible," Jake said, running his hand along the granite countertop. "But I have to ask, why is the rent so low? What's the catch?" River was quiet for a moment, looking out the window. "I need someone who will not ask too many questions about my work schedule. I travel frequently for business, sometimes at odd hours, and I prefer quiet roommates who keep to themselves mostly." That seemed reasonable enough. Jake was busy with his studies anyway and barely had time for a social life. "I work from home mostly," River continued, "doing data analysis for a company. Remote work, you understand? Sometimes I have video calls at unusual times due to different time zones." Jake nodded. That made sense with so many companies being global now. "I also have some dietary restrictions and prefer to do my own shopping and cooking," River added. "But I am happy to share kitchen space as long as we coordinate." "That all sounds fine to me," Jake said. "I'm pretty focused on my thesis project anyway. I probably won't be around much except to sleep and study." River's expression seemed to relax a bit. "Good, there is one more thing. I am very particular about temperature. I keep the apartment quite cool and I prefer not to change that." "Is that acceptable?" Jake thought about his current place where the heating barely worked anyway. "Cool is fine with me. I run hot anyway." They sat down at the kitchen table to discuss details. River explained that they would handle all the utilities and most of the rent. Jake would pay a small portion and help with general apartment maintenance. It seemed too good to be true, but River appeared completely serious. "Why are you being so generous with the rent?" Jake asked. He had learned to be suspicious of deals that seemed too good. River was quiet for a long moment. "Let me be honest with you. I am not from this area originally. I am still learning about local customs and social situations. Having a roommate who understands the area and can help me navigate certain things would be very valuable to me." That made sense. Jake had known international students who struggled with cultural differences and local bureaucracy. Like what kind of help? Jake asked. Sometimes I need advice about normal social interactions, how to respond to neighbors, what is appropriate behavior in different situations. I am still learning these things. River seemed genuine, and honestly, Jake could use someone who kept to themselves and paid most of the bills. His student loans were stressing him out, and this arrangement would solve his biggest financial worry. Okay, Jake said. When can I move in? River's face lit up with what looked like relief. This weekend, if that works for you. They shook hands again, and Jake noticed that River's skin still felt unusually cool. Maybe they had some kind of circulation issue. Over the next few days, Jake packed up his few belongings and prepared to move. He told his friends about the great deal he had found, though he kept the details vague. Something about River made him feel protective of their privacy, though he couldn't explain why. Moving day went smoothly. River was incredibly organized and helped Jake get settled without making him feel like he was intruding on their space. They established some basic ground rules about shared areas, cleaning schedules, and quiet hours. The first few weeks were surprisingly comfortable. River was exactly as promised. Quiet, clean, and mostly kept to themselves. Jake barely saw them during the day, though sometimes he heard typing or soft conversations coming from River's room during odd hours. River had explained about the international business calls, so Jake didn't think much of it. What Jake did notice was that River seemed to know things they shouldn't know. Like when Jake mentioned he was worried about rain ruining his plans to visit the library, River would casually mention that the weather would clear up by afternoon, and they were always right. Or when Jake was struggling with a particularly difficult equation for his thesis, River would make casual comments that helped Jake think about the problem differently. River also had some unusual habits. They never seemed to eat regular meals, instead snacking on things Jake had never seen before. Small, colorful items that looked like candy but smelled like vegetables. And despite keeping the apartment cool, River was always wearing long sleeves and seemed comfortable in temperatures that made Jake want to grab a jacket. But these quirks didn't bother Jake. River was respectful, helpful when needed, and the living arrangement was working out better than he had hoped. For the first time in months, Jake could focus on his studies without worrying about money or housing problems. As winter turned to spring, Jake realized he had grown comfortable with his unusual roommate. River was becoming less mysterious and more like a friend, someone he looked forward to talking with during their occasional shared meals or late-night encounters in the kitchen. Everything was going perfectly. Jake had no idea that their comfortable routine was about to be completely disrupted by events neither of them could have predicted. When the news announced the citywide lockdown, Jake's first thought was actually relief. Finally, he could focus on his thesis without any distractions. No more commuting to campus, no more social obligations, just him and his research in the comfort of his shared apartment. River, however, reacted completely differently. How long did they say this will last? River asked, staring at the TV screen with an expression Jake had never seen before. It looked almost like panic. They're saying at least 2 weeks, maybe longer depending on how things go. Jake replied, grabbing some snacks from the kitchen. It'll be fine. We've got everything we need here. But River didn't look fine. Over the next few days, Jake noticed his roommate becoming more and more agitated. River, who was usually calm and collected, started pacing around the apartment at all hours. Jake would wake up at 2 in the morning to the sound of footsteps in the living room. The first really strange thing Jake noticed was River's skin. It had always had that subtle glow, but now it seemed to be changing colors more obviously. Sometimes it would be pale blue, other times almost silver. Jake wondered if River was getting sick. "Hey, are you feeling okay?" Jake asked one morning when he found River standing by the window, staring outside with an intense expression. "I am fine," River said quickly, but their voice sounded strained. Just adjusting to being inside so much, that made sense. Jake knew some people really struggled with being cooped up, but River's behavior was getting stranger by the day. Sometimes Jake would hear this low humming sound coming from River's room, not like music or a machine, but almost like the sound was coming from River themselves. By the end of their first week in lockdown, Jake was genuinely worried. River barely ate anything, spent hours just standing by windows, and that humming sound was getting louder. The apartment also felt warmer than usual, which was weird because River always kept it so cool. "River, seriously, what's going on?" Jake asked after finding his roommate pacing the living room at 3 in the morning again. "You're starting to scare me," River stopped pacing and looked at Jake with those strange, shifting eyes. For a moment, Jake thought River was going to brush him off again, but instead, River sat down heavily on the couch and put their head in their hands. "I cannot explain it in a way you would understand," River said quietly. "Try me," Jake said, sitting down across from them. "Whatever it is, we're stuck here together anyway. Maybe I can help." River was quiet for such a long time that Jake thought they weren't going to answer. When they finally looked up, their expression was desperate. "Where I come from," River began slowly, "people like me go through something every year and a half or so. It is like, how do you explain? Your body's temperature system stops working properly." Jake frowned. "Like a fever?" "Not exactly. More like your internal thermostat breaks. Usually when this happens, there are places I can go. People who can help. Medical treatments." River's voice got quieter. "But with the lockdown, I cannot reach any of those places." "What kind of medical treatments?" Jake asked. "Maybe we can figure out another way to get help." River shook their head. "It is not the kind of medicine you would find in regular hospitals. It is very specialized for people with my particular condition." Jake was trying to understand, but something about River's explanation felt incomplete. "What happens if you don't get the treatment?" "My body temperature becomes unstable. I cannot regulate heat properly. It gets dangerous after a while." That explained why the apartment felt warmer and why River seemed so distressed. Jake had heard of medical conditions that affected temperature regulation. "So what can we do?" Jake asked. "There has to be something." River looked at him with an expression that was part hopeful, part terrified. "There is one alternative, but it is not conventional." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes when the medical treatment is not available, people with my condition can stabilize by staying close to someone else. Sharing body heat, maintaining physical contact for extended periods. It helps regulate the temperature." Jake blinked. "Like staying close to another person?" "Very close. For hours at a time. Skin contact is necessary for it to work properly." River's skin was cycling through colors faster now, like they were extremely nervous. "I know it sounds strange, and I would not ask if I had any other choice." Jake tried to process what River was telling him. It sounded unusual, but he had heard of medical conditions that required all kinds of strange treatments. And River was clearly suffering. "How close are we talking about?" Jake asked carefully. "We would need to maintain physical contact for several hours each day. Usually the most effective way is to lie together, skin to skin, so the heat can transfer properly." Jake felt his face getting warm. The idea of being that close to River made him nervous, but not in a bad way exactly. More like he was nervous about how not bad it sounded. "And this would help with your temperature regulation?" River nodded. "It is the only alternative I can think of. But I understand if you are not comfortable with it. I can try to manage on my own." Looking at River's pale, shifting skin and the exhaustion in their strange eyes, Jake realized his roommate was really suffering. Whatever this condition was, it was clearly serious. "Okay," Jake said before he could overthink it. "If it helps you feel better, we can try it." River's relief was obvious. "You are sure? It might be several hours each day for possibly weeks." "We're stuck here anyway," Jake said, trying to sound more casual than he felt. "Besides, you've been a great roommate. If I can help, I want to." River's skin seemed to settle into a softer blue color, and for the first time in days, they smiled. "Thank you. I know it is an unusual request. So how does this work exactly?" Jake asked. "We should start tonight if you are willing. The sooner we begin, the better my chances of stabilizing." That evening, they set up a comfortable area in the living room with blankets and pillows. Jake had never been in a situation like this before, but Rivers seemed to know what they were doing. They explained that the process worked best with direct skin contact, so they would need to remove their shirts. Jake tried to stay calm as they settled down together. Rivers' skin was definitely warmer than usual, and Jake could feel heat radiating from them like they had a fever. But as they lay there, Jake found it wasn't as awkward as he had expected. River was respectful and careful, and there was something comforting about being close to another person after being isolated for so long. After about an hour, Jake noticed River's breathing had become more regular, and their skin temperature felt more normal. "Is it working?" Jake asked quietly. "Yes," River murmured, sounding more relaxed than they had in days. "Thank you." As they lay there together, Jake realized that despite the strange circumstances, he felt oddly peaceful. The lockdown had been lonely, even with River around. Having this kind of close contact with another person felt surprisingly natural. What Jake didn't know was that this was just the beginning of something that would change both of their lives completely. What started as an awkward medical necessity slowly became the most natural part of Jake's day. Each evening, he and River would set up their makeshift comfort area in the living room, and Jake would help River through what they called their temperature regulation sessions. At first, Jake treated it like any other medical procedure. He would lie still, maintain the skin contact River needed, and count the minutes until it was over. But after the first week, something started changing. River's condition was definitely improving. The constant color changes in their skin became less dramatic, and they stopped that strange humming sound that had been keeping Jake awake. More importantly, River seemed calmer and more like their old self during the day. "You look better," Jake observed one morning as they shared breakfast. River's skin had settled into a soft, consistent silver tone that Jake was starting to find quite beautiful. "I feel much better," River admitted. "The treatment is working well. Better than I expected, actually." Jake found himself looking forward to their evening sessions. There was something deeply relaxing about the quiet intimacy of lying together, feeling River's breathing slow and steady, sensing their body temperature normalize under his touch. During their second week of treatment, something unexpected happened. Jake was drifting off to sleep during one of their sessions when he suddenly felt like he could sense what River was thinking. It was subtle at first, like catching fragments of a conversation from another room. Jake thought he was imagining it until he clearly felt River's gratitude and relief, as strong as if River had spoken the words aloud. "Did you just—" Jake started to ask, but River's eyes went wide. "You felt that," River said. It wasn't a question. Felt what? "I thought I heard," or felt. "I don't know what I felt." River was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes when people help me with temperature regulation, there can be side effects. A temporary connection." "What kind of connection?" "Sometimes you might sense my emotions or I might sense yours. It is not permanent, and it only happens during the treatment sessions." Jake propped himself up on his elbow to look at River better. "Is that normal?" "It happens sometimes. I should have warned you, but I did not expect it to occur so quickly." The idea should have freaked Jake out, but instead he found it fascinating. "Does it hurt anything?" "No, it is harmless. But it can be intense." Over the next few days, the connection became stronger. During their sessions, Jake could feel River's emotions as clearly as his own. He sensed River's relief when their body temperature stabilized, their gratitude for Jake's help, and something else that felt like affection. What surprised Jake most was that River seemed to be sensing his emotions too, and they didn't seem bothered by what they found there. "You are lonely," River observed one evening as they settled into their routine. Jake felt his face get warm. "I guess I didn't realize it showed." "It does not show. I can feel it. You have been lonely for a long time, not just since the lockdown." Jake was quiet. It was true, though he had never really admitted it to himself. Graduate school was isolating and he had never been good at making close friendships. "You do not have to be lonely anymore," River said softly. "Not while we are sharing this connection." Through their bond, Jake could feel that River meant it. There was warmth there, genuine care that went beyond gratitude for Jake's help. "What about you?" Jake asked. "What do you feel?" River's emotions were more complex, harder to read. Jake sensed homesickness, but also contentment. Worry about the future, but also something that felt like happiness. "I feel less alone than I have since I came to this place," River admitted. Their conversations during the treatment sessions became deeper and more personal. River shared stories about their home, though they were vague about details. Jake talked about his studies, his dreams for the future, his fears about whether he was smart enough to finish his degree. "You are much more intelligent than you believe," River told him one evening. "I can feel your mind working." "It is quite remarkable," Jake laughed. "You're just being nice." "I cannot lie to you through this connection," River said seriously. "You would feel if I was being false?" Jake realized they were right. He could sense the honesty in River's emotions, the sincerity behind their words. As their third week of treatment sessions continued, Jake found himself looking forward to the emotional connection, as much as he looked forward to helping River feel better. There was something incredible about being truly understood by another person, about having someone who could feel exactly what he was feeling. Is this what friendship is supposed to feel like? Jake asked one evening. River was quiet for a moment. I do not know. I have never experienced human friendship before. But it feels right, does it not? Jake had to agree. Despite the unusual circumstances, being close to River felt more natural than any relationship he had ever had. The connection was changing him in other ways too. Jake found himself more confident during the day, less worried about his thesis, more comfortable in his own skin. It was like having River's calm strength supporting him even when they weren't physically together. You are different than when we first met, River observed during one of their sessions. Different how? More sure of yourself. Happier. Jake realized it was true. Even though they were stuck in lockdown, even though the world outside felt chaotic and uncertain, he felt better than he had in years. You're different too, Jake said. More relaxed. More open. Being understood changes a person, River replied. They were both quiet for a while, just enjoying the peaceful connection between them. Jake could feel River's contentment mixing with his own, creating a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. River, Jake said eventually. Yes? When this is over, when you don't need the temperature treatment anymore, will the connection stop? River's emotions shifted and Jake felt a complex mix of sadness and uncertainty. I do not know, River admitted. Usually it fades when the medical treatment ends. Jake felt a pang of loss at the thought. The idea of going back to being alone with his own thoughts and feelings seemed unbearable now. But, River continued, I have never had a connection this strong before. It is possible that some of it will remain. Would you want it to? Jake asked. Through their bond he felt River's answer before they spoke it aloud. Yes, River whispered. I would want that very much. Jake closed his eyes and let himself feel the warmth of River's emotions surrounding his own. Whatever was happening between them, whatever this connection was becoming, he knew he didn't want it to end. Outside their apartment, the world remained locked down and uncertain. But inside their shared space, something beautiful and unprecedented was growing. Neither of them knew what it would become, but for the first time in either of their lives, they felt truly understood and no longer alone. By their 4th week of lockdown, Jake realized something was wrong. River's condition should have been getting better by now, but their temperature regulation sessions were lasting longer each day instead of shorter. What used to be 2 or 3 hours each evening had stretched to almost 5 hours, and River still seemed to need the connection. Is this normal? Jake asked one morning after they had spent most of the previous night maintaining physical contact. River looked uncomfortable with the question. Usually the treatment period is shorter. How much shorter? Normally 2 weeks is enough. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the apartment's temperature. River, it's been a month. Why isn't it working? River's skin shifted to that pale blue color that Jake had learned meant they were stressed. There are factors that can extend the treatment period. Stress, isolation, lack of proper medical support. What aren't you telling me? Jake asked. Through their connection during treatment sessions, he had learned to read River's emotions pretty well. And right now, River felt guilty about something. River was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the empty street below. Finally, they turned back to Jake with an expression he had never seen before, something like fear. The treatment creates a bond, River said slowly, a connection between the two people involved. I know that. We've talked about the emotional connection. No, Jake, a deeper bond. The more we continue the treatment, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, it can become permanent. Jake felt his stomach drop. Permanent how? We would always be connected. Always able to feel each other's emotions, always needing to be near each other. It changes both people involved. And you didn't think to mention this before? River's guilt was written all over their face. I thought it would only take 2 weeks. I thought we could stop before the bond became too strong. Jake started pacing around the apartment, trying to process what River was telling him. So what you're saying is that you might be accidentally turning me into something I never agreed to become. It is not that simple, River said desperately. The bond only forms if both people want it. If you truly wanted to stop, we could stop. But if we stop now, what happens to you? River looked down. My condition will get worse again. Jake felt trapped. He cared about River too much to let them suffer. but the idea that he might be changing into something else without fully understanding it was terrifying. What exactly would this permanent bond mean for me? Jake asked. You would be more sensitive to emotions, both yours and others. You would always know how I am feeling, and I would always know how you are feeling. We would need to stay relatively close to each other, not always in the same room, but not on opposite sides of the country. Jake sat down heavily on the couch. Anything else? River hesitated. Your lifespan might be extended. People who bond with my kind tend to live longer, healthier lives. Your kind? Jake looked up sharply. What do you mean, your kind? River's skin went completely pale. I should not have said that. River, what aren't you telling me about yourself? For a moment, Jake thought River was going to refuse to answer, but then they sat down across from him and looked directly into his eyes. I am not exactly human, River said quietly. Jake stared at them. What do you mean, not exactly human? I mean, I am not human at all. I am from somewhere else entirely. The apartment was completely silent except for the sound of Jake's heartbeat in his ears. Somewhere else, like another country? River shook their head. Another world. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. You're telling me you're an alien. I am telling you I am from a planet very far from here. I came to Earth to study and learn about human culture. The apartment, the fake job, the story about being from another area, it was all to help me blend in. Jake stood up and started pacing again. This is insane. You're telling me I've been living with an alien for 6 months and helping you through some kind of alien biological process? Yes. And now I might be permanently bonded to an alien? River flinched at his tone. Jake, please understand. I never intended for any of this to happen. I was supposed to have access to proper medical support. The lockdown ruined everything. Jake ran his hands through his hair. I need some time to think about this. He went to his room and closed the door, leaving River sitting alone in the living room. Through the walls, he could hear that humming sound starting again, which he now realized was probably some kind of alien distress signal. For hours, Jake lay on his bed trying to process everything. River was an alien, an actual extraterrestrial being, and Jake had been helping them through some kind of biological cycle that was creating a permanent bond between them. The crazy thing was, even knowing the truth, Jake found that his feelings hadn't changed. He still cared about River. He still wanted to help them. The connection they shared still felt real and meaningful, even if it was more complicated than he had understood. Around midnight, Jake heard a soft knock on his door. Jake? River's voice was barely above a whisper. My condition is getting worse again. Jake opened the door to find River looking pale and shaky. Their skin was cycling through colors rapidly, and they were shivering despite the warm temperature of the apartment. How long can you go without the treatment? Jake asked. Not much longer, River admitted, but I understand if you need more time to decide. Jake looked at River's face, at the genuine concern and affection he saw there. Alien or not, this was still the same person who had been his friend and roommate for months, the same person who had shared their thoughts and feelings with him, who had made him feel less lonely than he had in years. The bond, Jake said. If it becomes permanent, would it hurt me? No, it would only enhance your natural abilities. You would still be yourself, just more connected to me. And we would need to stay near each other. Yes, but I am planning to stay on Earth for the foreseeable future anyway. Jake thought about his life before River. The loneliness, the isolation, the feeling that he never quite fit in anywhere. Then he thought about the past month, feeling understood and connected and less alone than he had ever been. If I agree to continue, Jake said slowly, I want complete honesty from now on. No more secrets about what's happening to me or what it means. River nodded eagerly. Complete honesty. I promise. And I want to understand what you are, where you come from, what your life is really like. I will tell you everything. Jake took a deep breath. Then let's continue the treatment. The relief on River's face was unmistakable. But as they settled into their evening routine, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life was changing in ways he couldn't fully understand yet. He was crossing a line tonight that he could never uncross. But looking at River, feeling the warmth of their gratitude and affection through their growing connection, Jake realized he didn't want to go back to the way things were before. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling different. Not dramatically different, but like something fundamental had shifted inside him. He could sense River in the other room before he even got out of bed, not just their location but their emotional state. River felt calm and content in a way Jake had never sensed before. When he walked into the kitchen, River looked up from making coffee with a smile that seemed brighter than usual. The bond completed sometime during the night, River said simply. Jake waited to feel panic or regret, but neither came. Instead, he felt a deep sense of rightness, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. How do you know? Jake asked. Can you feel me right now, even though we are not touching? Jake concentrated and realized he could. River's emotions were there in the background of his mind, not overwhelming but present. Contentment, affection, and something that felt like relief. Yeah, I can feel you, Jake said, surprised by how natural it seemed. And I can feel you. Your curiosity, your acceptance. River paused. Your happiness. Jake realized it was true. Despite everything he had learned, despite the enormous change in his life, he felt genuinely happy for the first time in years. Over the next few days, as the lockdown restrictions began to ease slightly, River kept their promise about complete honesty. They explained that they were part of a cultural exchange program between Earth and their home planet, which was called something that Jake's human vocal cords couldn't quite pronounce. There are others like you on Earth? Jake asked, a few dozen. We are here to learn about human society and report back to our government about whether closer relations would be beneficial. And what have you decided? River smiled. That humans are far more complex and interesting than we initially believed. River also explained their biology more clearly. The temperature regulation issue was real, but it was more like a reproductive cycle that their species went through. The bonding process was how their species typically chose life partners. So we are basically married now? Jake asked, not sure how he felt about that. Not exactly. Bonded pairs among my people are closer than human marriages, but also more flexible. It is a partnership based on genuine compatibility and mutual support. Jake found that the bond enhanced his life in unexpected ways. His studies became easier because he could think more clearly. His anxiety about the future decreased because he always had River's calm presence in the back of his mind. Even physical tasks felt easier, like River's strength was somehow supporting his own. The biggest test came when Jake's parents called for their weekly video chat. You look different, his mother said immediately. Healthier. Happier. I've just been taking better care of myself during lockdown, Jake said, conscious of River moving quietly around the apartment behind him. Are you seeing someone? His father asked with the bluntness typical of their family. Jake felt River's amusement through their bond. It's complicated, Jake said. That means yes, his mother said triumphantly. Tell us about them. Jake glanced over at River, who nodded encouragingly. Their name is River. They are very kind and intelligent. We have been spending a lot of time together during lockdown. What do they do for work? His father asked. Data analysis for a tech company, Jake said, which was technically true. His parents seemed pleased that Jake had found someone, and Jake realized with surprise that talking about River felt natural, even with the obvious limitations on what he could share. After the call, River sat down next to him on the couch. That went well, River observed. They would like you if they met you, Jake said, though I have no idea how we would explain the whole alien thing. We do not have to explain everything immediately, River said. There is time to figure out how much of the truth is necessary. As lockdown restrictions continued to ease, both Jake and River faced decisions about their future. Jake received a job offer from a tech company across the country, a great opportunity that he would have jumped at before. What do you want to do? River asked when Jake showed them the offer. What I want is to stay here with you, Jake said honestly, but I also don't want to give up my career. You do not have to choose. I can relocate if necessary. My work is flexible as long as I maintain my cover story. Jake felt a wave of gratitude through their bond. You would do that? Jake, we are partners now. Your goals are my goals. River also had decisions to make. Their superiors had sent word that their assignment could be extended indefinitely if they chose, or they could return home with the data they had already collected. What do you want to do? Jake asked. River was quiet for a moment. I want to stay on Earth with you, but I also want my family to know that I am safe and happy. Could you do both? Stay here but visit home occasionally? Perhaps. The travel is complicated, but not impossible. They decided that Jake would take the job offer and River would request a transfer to continue their research in the new city. It would mean starting over in a new place, but they would be doing it together. The last week of their lockdown was spent making plans and preparing for their new life. Jake found that having River's constant emotional support made even stressful decisions feel manageable. "Are you worried about the future?" River asked one evening as they packed up their apartment. "A little," Jake admitted. "This whole situation is so far outside anything I ever imagined for my life." "But are you happy?" Jake thought about it. 6 months ago, he had been lonely, stressed and uncertain about everything. Now he had a partner who understood him completely, a job opportunity he was excited about and abilities he was still discovering. "Yeah," Jake said. "I am really happy," River smiled. "Good, because I have one more confession to make." Jake felt a flutter of nervousness. "What now?" "My people live much longer than humans. If you stay bonded with me, your lifespan will likely extend to match mine." "How much longer are we talking about?" "Several hundred years." Jake stared at River. "You are telling me I might live for hundreds of years?" "If you want to. The bond can be dissolved if you ever decide you want a normal human lifespan." Jake thought about having centuries to explore the world, to learn new things, to be with River. The idea should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like an incredible gift. "I think I can handle a few hundred years with you," Jake said. River's joy through their bond was so strong that Jake couldn't help but smile. Moving day went smoothly, with River using their enhanced abilities to make the packing and transportation much easier than it would have been otherwise. As they drove toward their new city, Jake reflected on how completely his life had changed. "Do you ever regret it?" River asked, sensing his thoughtful mood. "Which part? Finding out you are an alien? Getting bonded to you? Agreeing to live for centuries?" "Any of it." Jake considered the question seriously. His life was definitely more complicated now, and there were challenges ahead that he couldn't even imagine yet. But he had never felt more himself, more confident or more loved than he did now. "No," Jake said firmly, "I don't regret any of it." As they pulled up to their new apartment building, Jake realized that this wasn't an ending but a beginning. Whatever came next, meeting other aliens, figuring out how to explain River to his family, navigating a relationship that was unprecedented in human history, they would handle it together. And for the first time in his life, Jake felt truly excited about the future.